The soft hum of the space station's life support systems had always been Marcus Stone's lullaby, but this morning something was different. The familiar vibration that usually rocked him gently to sleep was overshadowed by an intense presence hovering over his bed. Through the haze of sleep, he felt eyes watching him, studying him with an intensity that made his skin prickle with awareness. Marcus slowly opened his eyes, expecting to find Zara curled up beside him as usual, her violet skin glowing softly in the dim light of their shared quarters. Instead, he found her standing at the foot of their bed, her tall, elegant form silhouetted against the viewport that showed the endless expanse of space beyond. Her silver hair, usually flowing loose around her shoulders, was pulled back in the intricate braids that her people wore for formal occasions. Zara. Marcus mumbled, pushing himself up on his elbows. The chronometer on the wall displayed 0530 hours, earlier than either of them usually woke. Is everything all right? Her luminous amber eyes met his, and Marcus immediately knew that whatever was about to happen would change everything between them. There was a determination in her gaze that he'd only seen once before, when she'd first confessed her feelings for him 6 months ago. That same unwavering resolve that had convinced him to take a chance on love with someone from an entirely different world. Marcus, she said, her voice carrying the melodic accent of her people that never failed to send shivers down his spine. We need to talk. The council has made their decision. He sat up fully now, suddenly wide awake. The Veltari Council, Zara-Th's people's governing body, had been deliberating for weeks about something she'd refused to discuss with him. Every time he'd asked, she'd deflected with kisses or changed the subject entirely. Now, seeing her formal posture and the weight in her expression, he realized why. What kind of decision? Marcus asked, though part of him already dreaded the answer. Zara-Th moved closer, her movements graceful despite the obvious tension in her body. She wore the traditional Veltari ceremonial robes, deep purple fabric that complemented her violet skin and made her appear even more ethereal than usual. The sight would have taken his breath away under different circumstances. My people are dying, Marcus, she said softly, her hands clasped behind her back. The plague that ravaged our home world 3 years ago, the effects were worse than we initially understood. Our birth rates have dropped by 80%. Our scientists estimate that without intervention, the Veltari will be extinct within 2 generations. Marcus felt his heart sink. He'd known that Zara-Th's people had suffered greatly from the biological weapon that had been used against them during the war, but he hadn't realized the full extent of the damage. Zara-Th, I'm so sorry. I had no idea it was that serious. She nodded, her amber eyes glistening with unshed tears. We kept it classified. Too much panic, too much despair. But now. She took a deep breath, and when she spoke again, her voice carried the authority of her royal lineage. The Council has identified certain genetic markers that could help restore our reproductive capabilities. Hybrid offspring, specifically, show remarkable resistance to the plague's long-term effects. The pieces began to fall into place, and Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Hybrid offspring, he repeated slowly. You mean? I mean children born from the union of Veltari and other species, Zara-Th confirmed. Human genetics, in particular, have shown exceptional compatibility with ours. The few hybrid children born in the past decade are not only healthy but demonstrate enhanced abilities from both parent species. Marcus swung his legs over the side of the bed, needing to move, to process what she was telling him. So the Council wants us to. The Council has mandated that all Veltari currently in relationships with genetically compatible species must immediately begin producing offspring, Zara-Th said, her formal tone cracking slightly. A minimum of 5 children per couple, with the first to be conceived within the next lunar cycle. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. 5 children. He was 32 years old, a mechanical engineer who'd never even owned a pet, let alone considered fatherhood. He'd been with Zara-Th for 6 months, 6 incredible, passionate, life-changing months, but they'd never discussed having children. They'd been too busy exploring their relationship, learning about each other's cultures, falling deeper in love with each passing day. 5 children, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Zara th, we've never even talked about kids. I mean, I care about you, I love you, but this is overwhelming, she finished for him, moving to sit beside him on the bed. I know. Believe me, I know. When the council first approached me about this 3 months ago, I refused. I told them that what we have is too precious to reduce to a breeding program. Marcus turned to look at her, studying the elegant lines of her face, the way her silver hair caught the light from the viewport. 3 months ago. You've known about this for 3 months and didn't tell me? I was trying to find another way, Zara th said, reaching out to take his hand. Her skin was always slightly cooler than his, and the contact sent familiar sparks of electricity up his arm. I thought maybe if I could convince them to expand the program to other species, or if our scientists could find a different solution. But they didn't. No. Her voice was heavy with defeat. If anything, the situation has gotten worse. We lost another colony ship last week, not to enemy action, but to the plague's secondary effects. The crew couldn't produce enough healthy offspring to maintain the population. The ship had to be evacuated. Marcus squeezed her hand, his engineer's mind already working through the logistics of what she was asking. And if we refuse? Zara th's expression darkened. The council would consider it an act of treason against our species. I would be stripped of my title and exiled. You would be banned from all Veltari space. She paused, her voice becoming smaller. We would never see each other again. The thought of losing Zara th sent a sharp pain through Marcus's chest. Over the past 6 months, she'd become more than just his girlfriend, she'd become his anchor, his home in the vast emptiness of space. Her laugh could brighten his darkest days, her touch could calm his most anxious moments, and her fierce intelligence challenged him to be better than he'd ever thought possible. There's something else, Zara th continued, her free hand moving to rest on her flat stomach. In our culture, once a couple is formally bonded, which we would need to be for this program, the female takes on the male's genetic signature. It changes our physiology, makes us more compatible for carrying hybrid offspring. Changes how? Increased fertility, shortened gestation periods, enhanced ability to carry multiple pregnancies. She met his eyes steadily. If we do this, Marcus, we wouldn't just be having 5 children over several years. Veltari biology means we could have them much faster than human couples. Marcus felt his head spinning. How much faster? Our gestation period is only 4 months instead of 9. And with the genetic bonding, I could conceive again almost immediately after giving birth. Zara th's voice became softer, more vulnerable. We could complete the program within 3 years. 3 years. 5 children. Marcus tried to wrap his mind around it, but the numbers seemed impossible. He'd grown up as an only child, raised by a single mother who'd worked 3 jobs just to keep them afloat. The idea of being responsible for 5 lives, of being a father to 5 children he'd never planned for, was terrifying. But as he looked at Zara th, really looked at her, he saw past the formal robes and the royal bearing to the woman he'd fallen in love with. He saw the fear in her amber eyes, the way her hands trembled slightly despite her composed exterior. She wasn't just asking him to save her species, she was asking him to choose between love and the life he'd planned for himself. What do you want, Zara th? He asked quietly. Not what the council wants, not what your people need, what do you want? Her composed mask cracked, and for the first time since he'd known her, she looked fragile. I want to save my people, she whispered. But I also want you. I want us. I want to build something beautiful together, even if it's not what either of us originally planned. Marcus stood up and began pacing the small room, his mind racing. The council really said 5 children minimum. Minimum, Zara th confirmed. They would prefer more, if we're willing and able. And we have 1 lunar cycle to start. 28 standard days. Marcus stopped pacing and turned to face her. She looked so beautiful sitting there, backlit by the stars, her violet skin seeming to glow with its own inner light. He thought about his life before her, lonely nights in sterile quarters, work that fulfilled his mind but left his heart empty, a future that stretched ahead predictably and safely. Then he thought about his life with her, laughter that echoed through their shared space, passionate debates about engineering techniques and cultural differences, the way she made even the most mundane moments feel like adventures. She'd brought color into his black and white world, had shown him that love could transcend species and planets and everything he thought he knew about himself. If we do this, he said slowly, if we have these children, it won't just be because the council ordered it, will it? It'll be because we choose to build a family together. Zarath's eyes brightened with hope. Yes. Marcus, yes. I would never ask you to do this just for duty. But the truth is, I've been thinking about it even before the council's mandate. I've been imagining what our children would look like, what they would be like. Strong like you, curious and brilliant and kind. Marcus felt something shift inside his chest, a door opening to possibilities he'd never considered. They would have your eyes, he said softly. And hopefully your ability to see the best in everyone. And your stubborn determination, Zarath replied, standing to move closer to him. Your incredible mind and your generous heart. They stood facing each other in the soft light of their quarters, the weight of the decision hanging between them. Marcus could see their entire future spreading out like a map, the challenges they would face, the joy they would find, the family they would build together against all odds. Zarath, he said, reaching out to cup her face in his hands. Ask me. She smiled, and it was like watching a sunrise. Marcus Stone, will you help me save my people? Will you build a family with me, have children with me, bind your life to mine for whatever time we have? Marcus leaned down and kissed her, pouring all of his love and fear and hope into the connection between them. When they broke apart, his answer was ready. Yes, he whispered against her lips. Yes to all of it. The next 3 days passed in a blur of preparation that left Marcus feeling like he was drowning in alien customs and protocols. Zarath had warned him that her family's arrival would be overwhelming, but nothing could have prepared him for the reality of facing Veltari nobility in their full ceremonial glory. Remember, Zarath said for the 100th time as she adjusted his formal attire, when my mother extends her hand, you press your palm to hers and recite the greeting I taught you. And whatever you do, don't look directly into her eyes until she gives you permission. Marcus tugged at the collar of his ceremonial robes, a deep blue fabric that Zarath had insisted would complement his dark hair and brown eyes. The outfit felt foreign against his skin, all flowing sleeves and intricate embroidery that probably cost more than his yearly salary. What happens if I mess up the greeting? My mother will assume you're either intellectually inferior or deliberately insulting her, Zarath replied matter-of-factly, smoothing down an imaginary wrinkle in his sleeve. Either way, she'll recommend to the council that our bonding be dissolved immediately. No pressure then, Marcus muttered, earning himself a sharp look from his girlfriend. Marcus, please. This is important. My mother, Matriarch Lysssera, holds significant influence in the council. Her approval could make the difference between this being a joyful celebration of our union or a formal interrogation of your genetic worthiness. The way she said, genetic worthiness made Marcus's stomach clench. Over the past 3 days, he'd learned more about Veltari reproduction customs than he'd ever wanted to know. Apparently, his human DNA wasn't just compatible with theirs, it was considered premium breeding stock that could potentially reverse generations of genetic degradation caused by the plague. The thought of being valued primarily for his reproductive capabilities rather than his engineering skills or his love for Zarath left him feeling uncomfortably objectified. But every time he started to voice these concerns, he saw the worry in Zarath's amber eyes and reminded himself that her entire species was depending on couples like them. A chime from their communication panel announced the arrival of the Veltari delegation. Marcus watched through the viewport as an elegant silver ship, all curved lines and crystalline surfaces, docked with their station. The vessel was 3 times the size of any transport he'd seen before, clearly designed to carry not just passengers but an entire royal court. "They're here," Zara Th whispered, her hands trembling slightly as she made final adjustments to her own ceremonial attire. She wore robes of deep purple and silver that made her violet skin seem to glow from within, her silver hair braided with precious metals that caught the light with every movement. "Hey," Marcus said, catching her hands in his and stilling their nervous motion. "We're going to be fine. We love each other, right? That has to count for something." Zara Th's expression softened, and for a moment she looked less like an alien princess and more like the woman who laughed at his terrible jokes and fell asleep reading engineering manuals. "I love you so much it terrifies me sometimes," she admitted. I need them to see what I see in you. I need them to understand that you're not just genetically compatible, you're extraordinary." Before Marcus could respond, their quarters doors slid open to reveal a procession of Veltari that took his breath away. Leading them was a woman who could only be Zara Th's mother, matriarch Lyssera. She stood nearly 7 feet tall, her violet skin darker than her daughter's, her silver hair elaborately styled with jeweled ornaments that spoke of centuries of tradition. Her amber eyes, so similar to Zara Th's yet somehow more piercing, swept over Marcus with the efficiency of a scanner analyzing a specimen. Behind her came what appeared to be half the Veltari nobility, men and women in flowing robes of various colors, all carrying themselves with the unconscious arrogance of those born to rule. Marcus recognized some of them from Zara Th's descriptions: council members, high-ranking military officers, spiritual advisors, and various relatives whose approval would be crucial for their bonding ceremony. "Daughter," matriarch Lyssera said, her voice carrying the same melodic quality as Zara Th's but with an underlying authority that made Marcus's spine straighten involuntarily. "We have come to assess this human you have chosen." Zara Th stepped forward and performed an elaborate bow that involved specific hand gestures and what sounded like a formal recitation in her native language. When she straightened, she switched back to standard galactic common. "Honored Mother, esteemed council members, I present Marcus Stone, my chosen mate and partner in the continuation of our bloodline." All eyes turned to Marcus, and he felt the weight of their collective scrutiny like a physical pressure. These beings held the future of his relationship with Zara Th in their hands, and he was acutely aware that one wrong move could destroy everything they'd built together. Matriarch Lyssera approached him with measured steps, her robes rustling softly against the floor. When she extended her hand, palm up, Marcus remembered Zara Th's instructions and pressed his palm to hers while reciting the greeting phrase she drilled into him: "I offer my strength to your lineage and my loyalty to your daughter." For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, the matriarch studied him. Then, to his immense relief, she nodded slightly. "Your pronunciation is adequate, and your respect appropriately demonstrated. You may look upon me, Marcus Stone." Marcus raised his eyes to meet hers and found himself staring into depths that seemed to hold the wisdom of ages. Matriarch Lyssera was beautiful in the way that mountains were beautiful, ancient, powerful, and slightly terrifying. "Tell me, human," she said, beginning to circle him slowly, "what do you know of Veltari bonding customs?" "I know that they're sacred to your people," Marcus replied carefully, "and that they represent not just the union of 2 individuals but the joining of genetic lines for the strengthening of the species." A textbook answer. The matriarch's tone gave away nothing. "But do you understand what you would be committing to? The Veltari bonding is not merely a romantic gesture, it is a biological transformation that will alter both you and my daughter permanently." Marcus felt his mouth go dry. This was the first he'd heard of any permanent alterations to himself. What kind of alterations?" Zara Th stepped forward quickly. "Mother, we were planning to discuss the physical bonding aspects after." Silence. The single word from matriarch Lyssera cut through the air like a blade. If this human is to be the father of my grandchildren, he must understand exactly what he is agreeing to. She stopped directly in front of Marcus, her imposing height forcing him to crane his neck to maintain eye contact. The Veltari bonding process involves the exchange of genetic markers that will enhance your compatibility for reproduction. Your human biology will be modified to better support the creation and nurturing of hybrid offspring. The process is irreversible. What kind of modifications? Marcus asked, his voice steady despite the uncertainty churning in his stomach. Enhanced physical strength and endurance, extended lifespan to match Veltari longevity, heightened sensory perception, and most importantly, the ability to share emotional and physical sensations with your bonded mate. The matriarch's eyes never left his face as she spoke. You will, in essence, become something between human and Veltari. Marcus felt the room spin slightly. Enhanced lifespan meant he could live for centuries instead of decades. Shared sensations with Zara-Th implied a connection deeper than anything he'd imagined possible. But the irreversible nature of the changes meant there would be no going back to his old life, ever. And if I refuse these modifications? Then you cannot bond with my daughter, cannot produce the offspring our species requires, and your relationship will be dissolved immediately. The matriarch's voice was matter-of-fact, as if she were discussing weather patterns rather than the complete destruction of his future with Zara-Th. Marcus looked over at Zara-Th, who was watching him with barely concealed terror in her amber eyes. He could see that she'd known about the modifications but had been afraid to tell him, probably worried that he would run at the first mention of permanent biological changes. How long do I have to decide? He asked. The bonding ceremony is scheduled for tomorrow evening, replied one of the council members, an elderly male with intricate tattoos covering his violet skin. The modifications must be completed before the ceremony can begin. Tomorrow evening. Less than 24 hours to decide whether to undergo irreversible biological changes that would transform him into something no longer entirely human. Marcus felt panic rising in his chest, but when he looked at Zara-Th again, he saw something that steadied him, absolute faith. She believed in him, trusted him to make the right choice, loved him enough to accept whatever decision he made. I need to understand the process better, Marcus said finally. What exactly happens during the modification procedure? Matriarch Lyssra nodded approvingly. A reasonable request. The process involves 3 stages: genetic harmonization, biological enhancement, and psychic bonding. Each stage is overseen by our most skilled healers and will take approximately 6 hours to complete. And the risks? Minimal for healthy specimens, she replied, the clinical term making Marcus wince slightly. However, the psychological adjustment can be challenging. You will experience heightened emotions, enhanced physical sensations, and the gradual development of telepathic connection with your mate. Some humans find the intensity overwhelming. Marcus absorbed this information, his engineer's mind automatically cataloging the implications. Enhanced physical capabilities would make him better at his job, but the psychological changes were an unknown variable. The telepathic connection with Zara-Th sounded both terrifying and wonderful. Imagine being able to share thoughts and feelings directly with the person you loved most. There is one more thing you must understand, Matriarch Lyssra continued. Once bonded, you will experience Veltari mating cycles. Your human physiology will adapt to match my daughter's reproductive rhythms, meaning your desire for intimacy will be significantly enhanced during certain periods. Zara-Th's violet skin darkened to deep purple, apparently the Veltari equivalent of blushing furiously. Mother, really, I don't think we need to discuss. We most certainly do, the matriarch interrupted firmly. If Marcus is to father multiple children in rapid succession, he must understand that Veltari biology does not approach reproduction casually. During bonding cycles, the physical and emotional need for intimacy becomes almost irresistible. Many unbonded Veltari have been known to lose rational thought entirely during these periods. Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks as he processed this information. The clinical way she discussed it made it sound more like a medical condition than a natural part of their relationship, but he could see the practical implications. If they were going to have 5 children in 3 years, there would need to be frequent periods of intense physical connection. How often do these cycles occur? He asked, trying to match the matriarch's clinical tone. Every 45 to 60 standard days, lasting approximately 1 week each time. She studied his expression carefully. Are you prepared for such intensity, human? Many of your species find Veltari passion overwhelming even without the biological modifications. Marcus looked around the room at all the faces watching him, waiting for his decision. These beings saw him as a solution to their species' survival, a genetic resource to be evaluated and potentially utilized. But when his eyes found Zarath's, he saw something entirely different: love, hope, and a future worth fighting for. I love your daughter, he said firmly, addressing the matriarch but speaking loud enough for the entire room to hear. I love her intelligence, her strength, her compassion, and yes, her passion. If undergoing these modifications means I can build a life with her, create a family with her, and help save her people in the process, then I'm willing to accept the risks. A murmur ran through the assembled Veltari, and Marcus caught what sounded like approval in their melodic voices. Matriarch Lyssera studied him for a long moment, then turned to address her daughter. Zarath, you have chosen well. This human shows both courage and wisdom. She looked back at Marcus. Tomorrow at sunset, you will undergo the modification process. By the following dawn, you will be bonded to my daughter and officially recognized as a member of our family line. As the delegation filed out to prepare for the ceremony, Zarath threw her arms around Marcus, holding him so tightly he could barely breathe. Thank you, she whispered against his neck. Thank you for choosing us, choosing this future, choosing love over fear. Marcus held her close, breathing in her unique scent and marveling at how perfectly she fit against him. Tomorrow he would become something new, something between human and alien, but tonight he was simply a man in love with an extraordinary woman. No matter what happens tomorrow, he said softly, no matter how the modifications change me, remember that I'm doing this because I can't imagine my life without you. Zarath pulled back to look at him, her amber eyes bright with unshed tears. And I promise that no matter how much we both change, my love for you will remain constant. You are my heart, Marcus Stone, and tomorrow you'll become my soul. As they stood together in the soft light of their quarters, Marcus realized that tomorrow would mark the end of his old life and the beginning of something entirely new. The thought was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure, but with Zarath in his arms, he felt ready to face whatever transformation awaited them. Marcus stood in the garden of their family compound on New Velterra, watching as their 5 children played among the crystalline flowers that grew only in the unique soil of this hybrid world. At 4 years old, their eldest daughter Kira had inherited her mother's violet skin and her father's determination, currently leading her younger siblings in an elaborate game that seemed to involve both human imagination and Veltari telepathic coordination. 3-year-old twins Dev and Nara chased after their big sister, their unique golden skin marking them as second-generation hybrids. 2-year-old Zane toddled behind them, his human-like appearance belying the enhanced strength that let him keep up with his older siblings despite his shorter legs. And baby Lyra, barely 6 months old, watched the chaos from Zarath's arms with the alert intelligence that all their children had inherited from both parents. Look at what we built, Zarath said through their mental connection, her mind voice filled with wonder and contentment. 5 perfect children, a thriving hybrid colony, and a love that grows stronger every day. And we're still just getting started, Marcus replied, moving to wrap his arms around his wife and youngest daughter. 400 years is a long time to keep building this dream. Through their bond, he could feel Zarath's agreement and her deep satisfaction with the life they'd created together. The Veltari population crisis had been successfully averted, with hybrid children like theirs proving to be not only healthy but possessing enhanced abilities that neither species could achieve alone. Their family had become a symbol of hope and cooperation between worlds. The Council wants to know if we're ready for number 6, Zarath mentioned with mental laughter, referring to the gentle pressure they still received from Veltari leadership to continue expanding their family. What do you think? Marcus asked, though through their bond he could already sense her answer. Ready for another adventure? With you? Always. As their children's laughter filled the air and the binary sun set over their hybrid world, Marcus marveled at how perfectly everything had worked out. He'd thought he was just falling in love with an extraordinary woman, but he'd actually been helping to create the future of interspecies cooperation and understanding. Their love story had become legend on both human and Veltari worlds, proof that the best relationships weren't just about finding someone compatible, but about choosing to build something beautiful together despite the challenges and unknowns. And with centuries still ahead of them and a growing family to nurture, Marcus and Zara looked forward to whatever adventures awaited them in their extraordinary life together.